Hi, Northland family. Have you ever felt mentally tired? You know, where your brain just kind of feels like it's been worn down? I think I might be getting kind of close to that right now. Perhaps it has to do with exposure to all the stuff that's been on social media, all over the internet, in the news, on TV. The stuff that's causing division and anger and extreme criticism. We have all heard so much about the coronavirus, about the contested election, about the economy. I mean, is it any wonder that we can become so mentally stressed? So how do we get over it? How do we become mentally refreshed? How do we take our brains on a vacation? I think we observe the counsel of the great apostle Paul, the counsel that he gives us in the wonderful book of Philippians, chapter 4, in one verse, verse 8. I think that verse, if we take it to heart and we practice what Paul is teaching us, will help us to become refreshed mentally. Paul tells us to think about whatever's true. What Paul is speaking of here is to think about what is real as opposed to that which is phony. Think about what is genuine, what is ideal. Paul is speaking of that which is truthful in every aspect of our lives, including our thoughts and speech and our actions. So ask yourself, are your thoughts true, or are you buying into the lies of the devil? Is your speech true, or are you dabbling at coloring the truth? Are your actions true, or are they deceptive? Second, Paul tells us to think about whatever is noble. The word Paul uses here is one which would be immediately known to the readers of his letter. The word we translate as noble was originally associated with the gods, with temples, with holy things, so it includes the idea of majesty and dignity and awe. The idea Paul wishes to express is for us to think about lofty things, majestic things, serious things as opposed to things that are frivolous. Think about things that lift the mind from the cheap things of the world and think about things that's noble and of worth. Have you considered lately the majesty, the seriousness of God, the dignity of God? Third, Paul tells us to think about whatever is right. This word is also translated as just or righteous or right conduct. Paul advised the Philippians to consider giving to God and to men their due, or for us to satisfy our obligations. The contrast as right as opposed to convenient is what's being presented here by Paul. How often do we choose what is convenient rather than what's right? Fourth, Paul tells us to think about whatever is pure. The word Paul uses here is from the same root word we translate holy. Paul admonishes us to be pure or clean. It's a cleanliness which fits somebody for God, for his very presence, for his service. Our thoughts regarding our motives and actions need to be pure. Do you feel cleansed in your mind? I don't think we can ever become mentally refreshed until we receive that cleansing. Are your thoughts fit for the presence and the service of God? Think about whatever is lovely. You know, the only time the Greek word that is translated here as lovely is found in this verse. Various translations have defined this verse as amiable or attractive, and that which calls forth love. It's lovely as opposed to that which causes discord. Have any of you ever taken a class on how to create friction between people? I don't think it's a class any of us need to take. It's easy to produce. We don't have to be taught to do it. Christians, we're called to be peacemakers. We're called to build bridges. Our Christian mind is to be set not on things that elicit from others bitterness or hostility and friction, but that which calls forth admiration and affection, that which calls forth love. Paul tells us to think next about whatever is admirable. Again, the only time the Greek word translated admirable is found in the New Testament is here in this verse. Paul's advice for Christians was to think about what is helpful as opposed to what is critical. You ever met a Christian who considers it their spiritual gift and their joy to be negative and critical about most things in general and maybe a few things in particular? One person has defined admirable as expressing what is kind and likely to win people and avoiding what is likely to give offense. Think about whatever is admirable. Paul says if anything is excellent or praiseworthy. I heard it said that if Christians ran their business as they run their Christianity, they'd be broke in about 12 months. The reason being that nothing but the best will do for home and business, but anything will do when it comes to service and worship. Paul's final bit of advice in this area of what we're to think about is for us to think about such things. Paul wasn't speaking of casual thought regarding the items we've discussed. Paul wanted Christians to make these subjects of careful consideration. Christians need to carefully reflect on these items. So ask yourself this week, are you mentally tired? Allow your mind to be refreshed by thinking on those things listed in Philippians 4:8. I love you, church. I missed meeting with you today, but I look forward to meeting next Sunday, November 15th. Have a great week.